To honor my grandfather's last wish, I, Connor Hayes, heir to $100 billion fortune, have been living a lie. My engagement to the Rossi family's daughter was part of the deal, and I'd spent a year enjoying the quiet life of an anonymous slacker. But a pregnancy announcement and a $50 million breakup fee just snapped me out of my extended vacation. And now that I've decided to end this little charade, the whole world is about to feel the tremor. I'm pregnant. It's not yours. There's 50 million on this card. Our engagement is over. Silence. The kind of dead silence that sucks all the air out of a room. I stared at my fiancée, Isabella Rossi, sitting across from me in the quiet cafe, the words not quite registering. She was as flawless as ever, dressed in custom Chanel, her makeup so perfect she looked like a porcelain doll. Even her words were delivered with a cool, detached air, like someone who had never known a moment of real struggle. Well, this was a new one. A breakup notice delivered with a severance package. My mind buzzed. My first reaction wasn't anger or heartbreak. It was, damn, 50 million? Seriously? Had this girl been watching too many soap operas? I picked up the black credit card. It was heavy, cool to the touch. The embossed platinum logo glittered under the soft cafe lighting, practically screaming, I'm expensive. Password 6/8? I joked, a reflex. Isabella's perfectly sculpted eyebrows twitched, a flicker of undisguised contempt in her eyes, mixed with a look that said, of course. The password is your birthday, she said, her voice like ice. Connor, we're not from the same world. I need a partner who can stand with me, someone who can elevate my family, not someone who's content working 9 to 5 with no ambition for the future. I nodded slowly, feigning understanding. She wasn't wrong. For the past year, to honor the promise I'd made to my grandfather on his deathbed, I'd shed every bit of my real identity. I worked as an administrative assistant at a small marketing firm, pulling in $8,000 a month before taxes, and rented a shabby 300-square-foot walk-up in Hell's Kitchen. My biggest thrill was haggling with the vendors at the farmer's market over the price of organic kale. It was a life Isabella, a woman born with a silver spoon in her mouth, would never understand. Her looking down on it was the most normal thing in the world. So the baby's father is, I asked, playing dumb, curious to hear how she'd spin it. Mark Adler. A hint of warmth finally entered her voice when she said his name. He's brilliant, just back from London. A managing director at Apex Ventures. His future is limitless. He can give me what I want and what the Rossi family needs. Apex Ventures. I repeated under my breath. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like a gnat I'd swatted away once. Whatever. Not important. So, take the 50 million, Isabella said, leaning forward slightly, her posture radiating a sense of charitable superiority. Consider it compensation for your time this past year. From now on, we're done. Don't bother me again. I looked at her, and a laugh bubbled up in my chest. It was absurd. She would never know that Mark Adler, the brilliant M.D., and his precious Apex Ventures wouldn't even register as a rounding error on my balance sheet. She would never know that the $50 million she was using to compensate me probably wouldn't cover the cost of refueling my Gulfstream G650. I pocketed the card and stood up. Okay, I wish you all the best. I turned and walked away without a single backward glance. Behind me, Isabella watched my retreating back, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. She had probably rehearsed for every possible reaction, for me to beg, to get angry, to break down in tears. But she hadn't expected this calm, clean break. It was as if I were tossing out a piece of trash. The feeling unsettled her, like she'd thrown a knockout punch only to hit a pillow. Whatever she probably thought, lifting her espresso to her lips, her confident smirk returning. A kept man with no ambition. What's he going to do without me? He just putting on a brave face. She had made the right choice. She was sure of it. I got back to my 300-square-foot pre-war walk-up. I called it a walk-up, but it was really a custom-designed, vintage experience I'd had an architect create. The peeling paint was a deliberate artistic choice. The creaky floorboards were reclaimed from a 19th century New England farmhouse, and even the grumpy orange tabby that hissed at me from the fire escape was a paid actor, courtesy of my neighbor Mrs. Gable. Lying on the squeaky single bed, I pulled out the $50 million card and held it up to the dim light. Nice. Save me the trouble of sourcing a prop. I dialed a number. The call was answered before the first ring finished. A respectful, elderly voice, trembling with a hint of excitement, came through the line. Master Connor, you've finally remembered this old servant. It was my butler, Arthur. Arthur, I said calmly. My vacation is over. The line went silent for 3 full seconds. Then I heard a frantic shuffling, the distinct shatter of a glass hitting the floor, followed by Arthur's voice, thick with unrestrained joy. Master Connor, are you saying you're coming home? I am. Wonderful. Simply wonderful. Arthur was practically babbling. I'll have the jet prepared at once. No, I'll come and get you myself. That life experience project of yours, should I have it dismantled? No, leave it, I said, rolling over on the protesting mattress. It's good to have a place that feels grounded. By the way, I need you to look into a company called Apex Ventures. Apex Ventures? Arthur paused, his tone instantly shifting to ice. Master Connor, has this company wronged you? I will have the legal department. Easy, Arthur. I cut him off. Just a casual inquiry. Oh, and my fiancée, Isabella Rossi, just broke up with me. Says she's pregnant with some guy's kid from that firm. A guy named Mark Adler. I could practically hear Arthur's blood pressure skyrocketing through the phone. I pictured him, mustache bristling with indignation. The audacity. That Rossi girl must be blind. The heir to Ethelred Global, the future king of international commerce, and she throws it all away for some 2-bit investment director? That's not just trading a diamond for glass. It's throwing away the diamond to lick the pavement. Master Connor, just wait. I'll have the Rossi family. That's enough, I said again. Relax, Arthur. It's a minor inconvenience. My year of living like a normal person was getting a little dull anyway. Now that the engagement's off, I fulfilled my promise to grandfather. It's over. Don't do anything until I tell you to. I hung up and let out a long breath. The year-long cosplay of being a regular guy was officially over. On the other end of the line, the joy on Arthur's face had morphed into a cold, lethal focus. He immediately dialed another number. It's Arthur. Initiate the housekeeping protocol. Yes, the young master's vacation has concluded. He paused, then added, and one more thing. I want everything on a company called Apex Ventures and a man named Mark Adler. I want his entire file, down to the color of the underwear he wore last night. Arthur stared out at the glittering skyline of the city, his eyes sharp as a hawk's. Master Connor was kind. He said not to do anything, but as a servant, it was his duty to ensure the ants who had disturbed his master's peace were taught a lesson they would never forget. In Arthur's mind, minor inconvenience translated to handle this with overwhelming force, but keep it quiet. A storm that would soon engulf the city's entire financial sector was brewing, all because of a single phone call from me, announcing the end of my vacation. Meanwhile, I was happily debating whether to use the $50 million tomorrow morning to buy a single bacon, egg, and cheese from a bodega, or 2 of them. The next day, I went to my office to quit, feeling refreshed. The HR manager, a woman in her 40s named Brenda, looked at my resignation letter with genuine regret. Connor, why the sudden departure? Is the pay not enough? I can talk to management about a raise. I smiled. It's not about the money, Brenda. I have some family matters to take care of back home. Well, what a shame. She shook her head. You're one of the most reliable and hardworking young people I've ever hired. Just not very ambitious. My ambition would give you a heart attack, I thought. After signing the paperwork, I walked out of the building carrying a cardboard box with a few personal knickknacks. The sun was bright. A whole year of this. Squeezing onto the subway, eating takeout for lunch, putting up with my boss's moods. An entire year experiencing the highs and lows of a normal life. Honestly, it had been interesting. If Isabella hadn't pulled this stunt, I might have kept the game going for another few years. My phone rang. It was Arthur. Master Connor, I have the information you requested. His voice was crisp and professional. Apex Ventures is a small-time VC firm focused on tech startups. Total assets are around $200 million. Mark Adler, 30 years old, has a shiny resume. Harvard MBA, joined Apex after returning to the States, made director in 2 years. He's led a few moderately successful funding rounds and has a bit of a name for himself in the industry. Okay, I said non-committally. However, Arthur's tone shifted. His resume is inflated. The Harvard degree was bought. The projects he led were all piggybacking on investments made by Ethelred subsidiaries. In short, we took the prime cuts, he got the table scraps, and packaged them as his own genius. The man has no real talent, just a fast talker and an opportunist. I chuckled. Now it's getting interesting. It gets better, Arthur continued. According to our intelligence, Isabella Rossi is not pregnant. She likely fabricated the story to ensure you wouldn't contest the breakup. The smile on my face grew wider. Wow, even the baby was fake. That woman would really stop at nothing to climb the social ladder. Master Connor, the Rossi's family business, Rossi Construction, is currently bidding for the new South Bronx waterfront development project. Their biggest rival is Peterson Development. A few days ago, at a fundraiser, this Mark Adler boasted to Isabella's father, Vincent Rossi, that he knows a senior executive at Peterson and could broker a deal for the Rossis to get a piece of the action. Arthur's voice dripped with disdain. And Vincent Rossi bought it? He did. Rossi Construction has been struggling for years. They're desperate for a major project to stay afloat. Mark's empty promises were exactly what they wanted to hear. I got now. It was a complete and utter sham. Mark Adler, the con artist, had dangled a fantasy in front of the Rossis, convincing them he was the golden ticket to save their family. And I, the unambitious deadweight, was the obstacle that had to be kicked to the curb. All right, I understand, I said, flagging down a passing Uber. Arthur, buy Apex Ventures for me. There was a stunned silence on the other end. Sir, you want to acquire it? That's right, I said, sliding into the back seat and giving the driver the address to my real home. Make up a reason. Tell them. Tell them I don't like their company logo. Get it done quickly. Arthur was speechless for a moment. Master Connor's logic remained as unique as ever. He had prepared 100 different, more subtle ways to make Apex Ventures and Mark Adler disappear without a trace. Instead, the young master chose the most straightforward and, frankly, the most insulting method possible. Yes, Master Connor. I'll see to it immediately. Arthur's voice was electric with suppressed excitement. He knew what this meant. The games were about to begin. As for me, I just figured that since this Mark Adler guy had ruined my vacation, the least I could do was make sure he lost his job. It seemed fair. At the Rossi family home, Isabella placed the $50 million transfer receipt in front of her father, Vincent Rossi. Dad, it's done. Connor. He agreed. Vincent looked at the receipt, his brow furrowed. $50 million. Isabella, don't you think that was a bit much? The boy may not have much drive, but he's a decent person. We didn't have to humiliate him like that. Dad, Isabella's voice was sharp. This is no time for sentimentality. What could Connor ever do for us? Give us a stable $8,000 monthly income? Mark is our future. He's the one who can save this family. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of Mark Adler standing with a middle-aged man at a gala. That's the vice president of Peterson Development. Mark has already set up a meeting for next week to discuss a partnership on the waterfront project. This is what our family needs. Vincent stared at the photo, the hesitation on his face slowly giving way to greed. The waterfront project was a multi-billion-dollar deal. If they could just get a small piece of it, Rossi Construction would be saved. Are you sure? We could trust this Mark Adler. Dad, he's a managing director at Apex Ventures. His connections are beyond anything a normal person like Connor could ever imagine, Isabella said with absolute certainty. Just then, her phone rang. It was Mark. Isabella's face instantly softened as she answered, her voice sweet as honey. Mark, darling, what's up? But the voice on the other end was frantic, laced with panic. Bella, something's happened. Something terrible has happened to the company. What is it? Calm down and tell me. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. The company. It's been acquired. Mark's voice was shaking. It happened just now, half an hour ago. Someone made an all-cash offer, 50% above market value. The board didn't even have a meeting. The partners signed on the spot. I've just been told. My entire department is being laid off. All of us. What? Isabella is shot to her feet. How is that possible? Who did it? I don't know. All I heard was, the reason for the acquisition was that the buyer didn't like our logo. Isabella and Vincent stared at each other, their faces a mask of disbelief and absurdity. Spending over $300 million in cash to buy a company just because you didn't like the logo, then firing the core team. What kind of maniac billionaire does that? So, what are you going to do? Isabella's voice was desperate. You've been fired? What about Mr. Peterson's VP? How the hell should I know? Mark finally snapped. I'm just an employee. The company's gone, so is my job. The Peterson deal. I'll see what I can do. The line went dead. Isabella stood frozen, the phone cold in her palm. 1 second she was in heaven, the next she was in freefall. What on earth is going on? Vincent was panicking now, too. How could this be a coincidence? Isabella's mind was a chaotic mess. Something felt terribly wrong, but she couldn't put her finger on it. An acquisition? Layoffs? Because of a logo? It sounded like something a spoiled trust fund brat would do. Smashing an expensive toy just because they were in a bad mood. A thought, sharp as lightning, flashed through her mind, but she dismissed it just as quickly. No, it can't be. It's absolutely impossible. He's just a regular guy who haggles over a $50 million payout. He couldn't possibly have that kind of power. It had to be a coincidence. Yes, just some random, eccentric billionaire throwing his weight around. Isabella repeated this to herself, but the chilling feeling of dread was like a vine, wrapping itself tighter and tighter around her heart. I was lounging in my $300 million penthouse overlooking Central Park, instructing 2 housekeepers on the delicate art of transplanting the succulent I'd brought back from my slum apartment into a solid gold planter. Gently, gently. That's my baby. I've been raising it for a whole year. Arthur stood nearby, his lips twitching. Master Connor's taste remained distinctive. Sir, Arthur said, handing me a cup of freshly brewed coffee. The Apex Ventures matter has been settled. Mr. Adler has been blacklisted from the financial industry. No reputable firm will ever hire him again. Good, I said, taking a sip. Excellent work. How's the Rossi family doing? It was a casual question. I'd been their son-in-law-to-be for a year. I figured I should at least feign some interest. Arthur's expression became peculiar. Sir, you truly don't know. Know what? I asked, genuinely confused. Arthur sighed, his mind already spinning its own narrative. Master Connor, your foresight is, as always, impeccable. Acquiring Apex Ventures was not merely to punish Mark Adler. It was a strategic masterstroke. For the past few years, several of Rossi Construction's successful bids were secured only with the quiet, indirect support of Ethelred's investment arms. Now that your vacation is over, that support has naturally been withdrawn. Their cash flow will not last a month. I blinked. That happened. Why didn't I know about it? Oh, right. It was probably some minor investment by a third-tier subsidiary. Arthur's team would have deemed it too insignificant to report to me. Fine. If he says it happened, it happened. So, the Rossis are in trouble. Trouble is an understatement, Arthur said with a cold smile. As of this morning, their largest material supplier has terminated their contract. The banks are reassessing their credit lines and preparing to call on their loans. As for the South Bronx project, Peterson Development has already made it public that they will have absolutely no partnership with Rossi Construction. Vincent Rossi is probably contemplating a long walk off a short pier as we speak. I listened, feeling like I was in a movie. All I wanted was to get some con artist fired, and somehow I'd trigger corporate bankruptcy. Was this the butterfly effect? If so, my wings were apparently made of titanium. Master Connor, your strategy of cutting off their resources at the source was brilliant. Arthur looked at me with pure adoration. You bided your time, and with one move, you sent the Rossis and that Adler fellow from heaven to hell. I imagine Isabella Rossi is drowning in regret right now. I stroked my chin. Regret? She probably still thought this was all just a string of bad luck. After all, in a normal person's world, you don't just assume that the loser fiancé you dumped yesterday can suddenly control the fate of your entire family with a snap of his fingers. That gap in perception was amusing. All right, Arthur, enough with the flattery, I said with a wave of my hand. Let's not interfere with the Rossis directly. Let's just watch and see how they handle it. Right now, all I want to do is repot my plant. As Arthur watched me delicately fuss over the nearly dead succulent, his admiration deepened. Look at him, he thought, the mind of a master strategist. After orchestrating a corporate takedown that would reshape the city, he could return his focus to something as simple as a flower. That level of calm, that unshakable composure in the face of chaos, was the true mark of a great man. Master Connor was a man of profound and terrifying depths. Gloom had descended upon the Rossi household. Half of Vincent Rossi's hair seemed to have turned white overnight. He sat in the cavernous living room, chain-smoking cigars, the ashtray already overflowing. "It's over. It's all over," he mumbled to himself. Suppliers backing out, banks calling in loans, partners turning their backs. In just 2 days, the once mighty Rossi construction was on the verge of collapse. Isabella sat nearby, her face pale. On her phone was the last message from Mark. "Bella, I'm sorry. I can't help you. I've been blacklisted. I'm leaving the city. Take care of yourself." A fraud. A complete and total fraud. And she had given up? No, she couldn't think about it. The image of Connor's calm, untroubled face sent a spasm of pain through her heart. "Dad, we still have a chance," Isabella said through gritted teeth. "I'll go see the chairman of Peterson Development himself. I don't believe they'd walk away from a potential partnership over something so trivial." Vincent looked up, his eyes bloodshot. "You? What can you do? He won't even take my calls anymore." "I'll beg him." Isabella stood up, her voice trembling with desperation. "I'll do anything to save this company." She was clinging to one last sliver of hope. She believed the root of their problems was Mark offending someone at Peterson Development. If she humbled herself, offered a sincere apology, maybe, just maybe, things could be salvaged. She never once connected this catastrophe to the man she had just discarded. Meanwhile, in the chairman's office of Peterson Development, Mr. Peterson, a balding man in his 50s, was standing respectfully before Arthur, beads of sweat dotting his forehead. "And Mr. Arthur, to what do I owe the honor of this visit?" Arthur sipped his tea without looking up. "Mr. Peterson, I hear you're competing with Rossi Construction for the South Bronx project." No, not at all." Peterson nearly jumped out of his skin. "We wouldn't dare compete with the Rossis. In fact, we've decided to withdraw our bid. Unconditionally." He was not kidding. The previous night, he'd received a call from a man whose shoes he wasn't worthy to shine, the second-in-command on the board of Ethelred Global. The message had been simple: stay away from the Rossi family. Peterson had no idea how the Rossis had managed to anger a titan like Ethelred, but he knew that if he didn't comply, Peterson Development would cease to exist by morning. "Oh," withdrawing, Arthur finally set down his cup. The quiet clink echoed in the silent room. "Mr. Peterson, I believe you've misunderstood. Our young master's intention is, you can have the project, but you're not to involve the Rossis." Peterson stared, confused. A slow, cruel smile spread across Arthur's face. "In fact, not only will you not work with them, you will make sure they have a front-row seat to watch you succeed. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Peterson, a shrewd businessman, understood immediately. This wasn't just about destroying them. This was about psychological warfare. To force the Rossis to watch as the prize of a lifetime, the very thing that could have saved them, was snatched from their grasp and handed to their biggest rival. It was a torture far more exquisite than simple bankruptcy. "I understand. Perfectly." Peterson nodded vigorously. "Mr. Arthur, rest assured, I will handle this beautifully. Not only will I win the bid, I will host the most lavish victory gala this city has ever seen. And the invitation, I will deliver it to Vincent Rossi myself." Arthur nodded, satisfied. This one learned fast. Master Connor had said not to interfere directly. He never said they couldn't arrange for a little dinner theater. He could already picture the looks on the faces of Vincent and Isabella Rossi at that gala, watching their rivals triumph while they became the laughingstock of the city. I was in my private home theater, roaring with laughter at some old slapstick comedy. Arthur entered quietly and whispered something in my ear. "Gala? What gala?" I took off my 3D glasses, confused. "The victory celebration for Peterson Development winning the South Bronx project," Arthur explained. "Mr. Peterson sent a personal invitation. The seat of honor, hoping you might grace them with your presence." "Pass," I said with a wave. "Too loud. I just want to watch my movie in peace." Arthur's expression became one of solemn reverence. He automatically translated my words into, "Such a minor event is beneath my notice. It is amusing enough to simply watch the pawns celebrate on the board I have set." "Of course, Master Connor." I will relay your regrets, Arthur said, bowing as he backed out of the room. He paused at the door. By the way, sir, Vincent and Isabella Rossi will also be in attendance. Oh, what for? That piqued my interest. They are going to beg Mr. Peterson for mercy, Arthur said, a hint of dark amusement in his voice. An image instantly formed in my mind. The once proud Rossis, forced to grovel before their arch-nemesis, in front of the entire city's elite. TSK. This plot was far more entertaining than the movie I was watching. Arthur. Yes, Master Connor. Have my tuxedo pressed. We're going to the theater. Arthur's eyes lit up. He knew it. Master Connor wouldn't miss a spectacle like this for the world. The mastermind behind all, sitting quietly in the front row, enjoying the performance of the actors on his stage. That was the ultimate pleasure of a king. At once, Master Connor. Arthur's voice boomed, his steps energetic as he turned to leave. The night of the gala, the city's most exclusive five-star hotel, was ablaze with lights, a glittering assembly of New York's high society. Mr. Peterson, the man of the hour, was beaming as he moved through the crowd, soaking in the praise and congratulations. In a forgotten corner of the grand ballroom, Vincent and Isabella Rossi stood apart, a stark contrast to the festive atmosphere. Vincent's shoulders were slumped, and Isabella had shed her mask of pride, her face etched with exhaustion and anxiety. They looked like defeated animals, awaiting their final judgment. Isabella, do you think he'll really see us? Vincent's voice trembled. He will, Dad. He has to, she whispered, trying to reassure herself, but her eyes kept darting nervously toward the entrance. Just then, a ripple of excitement went through the crowd near the doorway. Everyone turned to look. A young man in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, flanked by a silver-haired but impeccably dressed older gentleman, was walking in. The young man was handsome, with an air of effortless grace and a faint, unreadable smile playing on his lips. His arrival was like a spotlight turning on, instantly capturing the attention of everyone in the room. The city's wealthiest and most powerful figures, men who usually commanded respect, all fell silent. Some instinctively straightened their posture, their faces shifting to expressions of deference and awe. Mr. Peterson, who had been laughing with a group of investors, froze mid-sentence, nearly spilling his champagne. He quickly excused himself and practically jogged to the entrance. And Mr. Hayes, Mr. Arthur, I had no idea you were coming. What honor. This is truly an honor. Peterson's posture was so deferential, he was practically folded in half. The entire ballroom fell dead silent. Everyone stared, stunned. A young man who could make the chairman of Peterson Development bow and scrape like a bellboy. Who in God's name was he? In her corner, as Isabella's eyes focused on the young man's face, her mind went completely blank. Clang! The wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the marble floor. The man being treated with such reverence, the one Peterson called Mr. Hayes, was none other than the man she had dismissed with $50 million just a few days ago. Her loser ex-fiancé. Connor. Time seemed to freeze. I saw the color drain from Isabella's face, saw the look of pure shock on her father's, and the corner of my mouth turned up just slightly. Yeah, this show was even better than I'd expected. Mr. Peterson, hope we're not crashing your party, I said casually. Not at all. Never. Peterson was ecstatic, practically tripping over himself to lead the way. Your presence is the highest honor, Mr. Hayes. I have the best table reserved for you. I nodded, following him toward the head table. My gaze never once lingered on Isabella or her father. I looked right through them, as if they were nothing more than dust motes in the air, completely unworthy of my attention. That utter dismissal was more devastating than any insult I could have hurled. Isabella felt a chill shoot up from the soles of her feet, a cold dread that turned her limbs to stone. Her mind raced, desperately trying to make sense of the impossible scene unfolding before her. Connor, Ethelred Global, Arthur, the acquisition of Apex Ventures, the collapse of her family, Peterson Development, all the scattered, unrelated pieces of her nightmare suddenly slammed together, forming a picture so horrifying she couldn't breathe, a truth she couldn't accept. It was never a coincidence. From the moment she had uttered the words, "I'm pregnant," she and her entire family had been caught in a web woven by Connor himself. A web called despair. He wasn't a loser. He wasn't a kept man. He was a sleeping dragon. And she, like an ignorant child, had poked in the eye with a stick. And now, the dragon was awake. It had barely even stretched, and her entire world, her family, her future, everything she prided herself on, had been turned to ash. "No, it's not possible," Isabella whispered, her voice hollow. Vincent Rossi looked even worse. He'd been in the business world for decades, weathered countless storms. But in this moment, his entire understanding of the world had been shattered. He remembered a year ago, when Connor's grandfather, the old friend who had once saved his life, had grasped his hand and said, "Vince, my grandson is the greatest pride of my life. I know he'll be in good hands with you." At the time, he thought it was just the sentimental rambling of an old man. Now he understood the weight of those words. He had personally thrown a mountain of gold, no, the very god of wealth himself, out his house. Thump! Vincent's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. At the head table, the whispers began, everyone trying to figure out who I was. I simply sat down, picked up my knife and fork, and said to Arthur, "I'm a little hungry. I'll have the Australian Wagyu, medium rare." It was as if nothing else in the room mattered. I was just here for a show, and maybe a late dinner. Mr. Peterson nervously poured me a glass of 82 Lafite. "Mr. Hayes, please try this." I swirled the wine in my glass, but didn't drink. My gaze drifted back to the corner of the ballroom. Isabella was struggling to help her father up, her face a ghostly white, her empty eyes fixed on me. I could read the emotions swirling in them. Shock, fear, regret, and a desperate, pathetic sliver of hope. She wanted to approach me, but she didn't dare. The eyes of the other guests were like knives, slicing away at her remaining pride. Moments ago, they had been mocking the Rossis. Now, their expressions were a mixture of pity and morbid fascination. The fool who mistook a dragon for a worm and threw it away. Her story would be the cautionary tale told at dinner parties for the next decade. I looked away and took a bite of my steak. Perfectly cooked. "Mr. Peterson," I said, dabbing my lips with a napkin, "do a good job with the waterfront project. Ethelred Global will give you its full support." Peterson nearly crushed his wine glass. The full support of Ethelred Global. This wasn't a lottery ticket. This was being handed the keys to the entire gold mine. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Thank you," he stammered, overwhelmed. I will dedicate my life to making it a success." I just smiled and said nothing more. My point had been made. I wanted to, right in front of Isabella, give the very thing that could have been hers to her mortal enemy. I wanted her to understand, with soul-crushing certainty, what she had thrown away. I wanted her to know that the brilliant Mark Adler, the man she had schemed to win, wasn't even worthy of polishing my shoes. This was the most satisfying revenge of all. Finally, Isabella moved. She helped her father to his feet, and together they began the long, agonizing walk toward my table. Every step seemed to be on broken glass. The whispers followed them. She reached my table, her lips trembling, but no words came out. Vincent, ever the veteran, managed to compose himself. He stood before me and bowed deeply from the waist. "And Mr. Hayes, Master Connor, I was blind. I didn't recognize who you were. I'm so sorry." His voice was hoarse, thick with despair. I didn't look at him. I just continued to cut my steak. "Mr. Rossi, what is all this?" I said with mock surprise. "I thought we settled everything. Your daughter gave me $50 million, after all. A fortune." Thump. Vincent dropped again, this time to both knees. "Master Connor, please, I'm begging you, have mercy. Spare the Rossi family. I will give you every share of Rossi Construction. Just leave us a way to live." Isabella knelt beside him, the tears finally breaking free. "Connor, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, can you give me another chance? We can start over." She wept beautifully, a picture of tragic regret. A year ago, I might have felt something. Now I just felt sick. I put down my silverware and finally looked her in the eye. "Miss Rossi, I think you're confused," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried in the silent room. "There was never a we to begin with. so there's nothing to start over. As for chances, I gave you a year's worth. You're the one who threw them away. And one more thing, I said, standing up to look down on her. Don't ever call me Connor again. From the moment you held up that credit card and told me you were carrying another man's child. You lost that right. I straightened my tie. Arthur, the show is over. Let's go home. Yes, Master Connor. I turned and walked away, and I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Isabella's heart-wrenching sobs and her father's broken wails. The ballroom was utterly silent. Everyone watched me leave, their eyes filled with a mixture of awe and terror. They knew that, as of tonight, the city's balance of power had been rewritten. All because one young man had decided his vacation was over. Back home, I changed out of the tuxedo and into a comfortable sweatsuit, sinking back into the plush sofa in my theater. The comedy was still playing, but the gags on screen now felt flat and pointless. Arthur brought me a glass of warm milk. Are you all right, Master Connor? I shook my head. I'm fine. It just all feels a little anticlimactic. Arthur was silent. He understood. It wasn't about the woman. It was that the game had been too easy. The opponent was so weak that there was no thrill in the victory. It was like a lion taking a moment out of its day to step on an ant. What was there to celebrate? Arthur, what's the final plan for the Rossis? I asked, taking a sip of milk. As you instructed, we will not acquire their company. However, without support from banks or suppliers, bankruptcy is inevitable. It is only a matter of time. Good, I nodded. And Mark Adler? He has been deported. Evidence of his academic fraud and financial crimes has been anonymously submitted to the authorities. He will never be able to return to this country. Fine. I leaned back and closed my eyes. It was all over. The normal life that had briefly intrigued me, the ridiculous engagement, it had all evaporated like a dream. I was back to being Connor Hayes, heir to Ethelred Global. So why did I feel so empty? Maybe I didn't miss Isabella. Maybe what I missed was being the version of Connor who could spend half an hour arguing with a street vendor over 50 cents without a care in the world. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I opened it. Connor, I know I was wrong. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you one thing. I was never pregnant. I lied. I was desperate to get out of the situation we were in, desperate to find a way to save my family. I'm sorry. It was from Isabella. I stared at the text for a moment, then deleted it without a flicker of emotion. What was the point of saying that now? In the real world, there are no do-overs. There are only actions and consequences. I picked up the remote and turned off the movie. Arthur, book me a flight to Antarctica. Sir? To Antarctica? Yes. I suddenly have the urge to see some penguins. And take another vacation. Maybe a place that was quieter, purer, would help me find something interesting again. Epilogue. 1 year later. An Antarctic research station. I sat on the ice in a thick parka, holding a fishing rod over a hole. A figure bundled up just as heavily snuck up behind me and gave me a shove. Hey, slacking off again. I turned to see a bright, smiling face, red from the cold. Dr. Chloe Vance. She was the station's doctor and a genuinely interesting person. She performed my emergency appendectomy 6 months ago when I first arrived. Dr. Vance, this is called work-life balance, I said with a grin. Sure it is. She rolled her eyes, pulling a thermos from her coat. Here, Kingertea. Warm up. I took the thermos, a warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the tea. Oh, check this out, she said, pulling out her satellite phone and opening a news feed. The headline read, Former tycoon Vincent Rossi sentenced to 20 years for corporate fraud. Below was a picture of him being led away in handcuffs, looking haggard and defeated. I glanced at it, feeling nothing. Chloe, however, leaned in conspiratorially. Hey, do you think that family pissed off someone really, really powerful? I heard they were a big deal in New York a year ago, and then poof, they just imploded. And the daughter, I heard she's working as a receptionist somewhere now, barely scraping by. I just smiled and said nothing. But here's the crazy part, she whispered, her eyes wide. A friend of mine who's a surgeon back in the city told me a secret. That Isabella Rossi, she had an operation at their hospital last year. What kind of operation? A hysterectomy, Chloe said, shaking her head. Something about a benign tumor they caught too late. To save her life, they had to take everything out. She can never have children. My hand holding the fishing rod tightened. When was the surgery? Let me think. It was around this time last year, she recalled. My friend said she came in all by herself. No family, no one. It was really sad. This time last year, right around the time she broke up with me. A thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. So when she said, I'm pregnant, it wasn't a lie to trade up. It was because she knew she could never have a family, and she didn't want to burden me, the simple 9-to-5 guy with, as she thought, a bright future ahead of him. So she chose the cruelest, most definitive way to force me to leave her. And the $50 million, it wasn't a payoff. It was the last thing she could give me as compensation for a future she couldn't share. The line went taut, a bite, but my hands didn't move. I just sat there, letting the fish struggle on the line beneath the ice. The wind howled across the endless white plains of Antarctica. I stared at the distant, waddling penguins, my mind a chaotic swirl of emotions. So the grand, dramatic story of my revenge, from the very beginning, had been nothing more than a colossal misunderstanding.